Okay. So welcome everyone. My name is Jessica Ramey Stender, and I am the Policy Director and Deputy Legal Director of Equal Rights Advocates and the proud co-chair of the Stronger California Advocates Network. We are thrilled to be here today to talk to you all about our 2025 policy agenda to advance gender, racial, and economic security for Californians. We recognize that these are unprecedented times for Californians and for people across the country, which makes our work through Stronger California, with the support of all of you who are here today, even more critical. Before we get started into the substantive presentations, did want to make a few housekeeping announcements, which is that we will be presenting on the various slides. We will provide the slides to you after the webinar. We will also provide a recording of the webinar. And most critically, we will include ways that you all can support these policy priorities. Also, if you have questions as you're listening to the presentations, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box. We will get to them if we can, and any questions we can't get to, we will send follow-up information following the webinar. So I want to just get started to kind of lay out the groundwork of how we came together with the Stronger California Advocates Network over a decade ago. And really that centers on the fact that California is home to millions of women, people of other genders, and families who rely on common sense public policy to help them build assets, succeed in equitable and safe workplaces, access affordable and quality childcare, and ensure access to reproductive health care. And that's why we, as an advocacy community in Stronger California, legislators and key partners in the Legislative Women's Caucus, and community members throughout the state came together to create Stronger California. And the idea was to address the barriers that exist to economic security for women, people of other genders, and families through a comprehensive approach. We don't experience these obstacles in silos, and our policy priorities and our policy responses should also not be siloed. We need comprehensive policy solutions. So the Stronger California Agenda has 5 pillars that frame the policy initiatives critical to the economic security of all Californians. And it recognizes that women and people of other genders play a critical role in creating a strong and vibrant economy in the state. Women influence the state. We're 12% of the country's women, and we comprise almost half the workforce in our state. Mothers in California are sole primary or co-breadwinners in almost 60% of all families. And so we need policies that support these people in ways that really matter. So the 5 policy pillars that we really frame our agenda around are listed here. And we will go through all of our priorities this year on each pillar, where they're at now and how you can support. We'll just kind of frame all of this by saying the obvious, which I alluded to before, that we are now facing unprecedented attacks against civil and constitutional rights, direct attacks on women, immigrants, LGBTQ communities, and critical safety net protections that Californians and people across the country rely on. So we are doubling down, have been doubling down in our collective work for systemic policy change that really protects the fundamental rights of all Californians and tries to create better working and living conditions for all. And so we are really grateful for all of you who support these policy priorities throughout the session and for you being here today. And we will, with that, get into our first presentation. I will turn it to my incredible colleague, Kel, to get us started.
Thanks, Jessica, and hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. We are starting with our first pillar, ensuring fair pay, job opportunities, and workplace justice. And we have 3 fantastic speakers for you in this pillar. The first is Mariko Yoshihara. She's the Legislative and Policy Director for California Employment Lawyers Association. The next is Daniel Jefferson, a policy analyst and organizer with the Filipino Workers Center of Southern California. And then Jessica Stender, who you already heard from. So Mariko, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Kel. So it was actually 10 years ago, just crazy. The California Employment Lawyers Association and Equal Rights Advocates passed, and with the help of this coalition, passed the Fair Pay Act of 2015, which is a historic piece of legislation that closed enormous loopholes that we had in our equal pay laws. 10 years later, we're obviously still fighting this persistent gender and race wage gap. And in fact, the wage gap widened in 2023 from 2022, which is the first time this has happened since 2003. In California, the wage gap persists at 79 cents for every dollar a man makes, and women of color are facing an even larger gap. 56 cents is the gap for Black women and 41 cents for Latinas. So our bill does 5 things to strengthen our Equal Pay Act. So I'm not exactly going to go in this order that's on the slides, but first, I think importantly, making sure that workers can actually file their claims. So we are expanding and clarifying the statute of limitations. Right now, you have 2 years to file an Equal Pay Act claim, 3 years if it's willful. Our bill would make the statute of limitations 3 years for all claims. And it would clarify that the statute of limitations restarts for every discriminatory paycheck. It's not just tied to when the discriminatory pay decision was made. Often the pay decision leading to the unlawful pay differential was made years and years ago, but because of pay secrecy, the worker doesn't find out about it until much later, and we wanted to make sure that they don't lose their claim. We're also extending the recovery period. Right now, you can only recover lost wages going back 2 years or 3 years if the violation was willful. So this bill will allow workers to go back 10 years to recover their lost wages due to pay discrimination. So we are clarifying what constitutes wages. We are incorporating a much more expansive definition and clarifying that for purposes of the Equal Pay Act, wages includes all forms of compensation and includes things like stock options, fringe benefits, bonuses, expense accounts, etc. The bill will also get rid of the gender binary language that is currently in the Equal Pay Act. Right now, the act refers to paying a person of the opposite sex less for doing substantially similar work. We are changing that to a person of another sex, and we are incorporating the very expansive definition, an inclusive definition of sex from our anti-discrimination laws. And then lastly, we are requiring that salary ranges in job postings are actually made in good faith and are not extremely broad ranges that make the disclosures essentially meaningless. We've seen pay ranges in job postings that are, $50,000 to $500,000. We don't think that's a good faith estimate. So we are just, again, requiring good faith in that provision that SELA and ERA also teamed up on to pass a few years ago. The bill is right now on suspense, and so we are hoping the bill gets off suspense, and we are in that last sprint and hoping to get it signed by the governor. And should I pass to Daniel? Okay.
Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Daniel Jefferson. I'm with the Filipino Worker Center, a member of the California Coalition for Worker Power, and I'm here to talk about SB 578, which would codify the California Workplace Outreach Project, which is an ongoing program that we've been a part of, and many other community organizations and other partners have been a part of since COVID. The program really works with us and other trusted community partners to educate low-income and other under-engaged workers. Oh, excuse me one sec. Sorry about that. So it educates workers on things like minimum wage, overtime, health and safety, and a bunch of other things that are important to know. A lot of workers don't know these things, and they can't bring up to their employers, and they don't know they have the option to file whatever the right remedy may be. Again, it began during COVID, and we're going into 5.0, so our 5th round. And again, it's structured to target low-wage industries, such as with us, we work with care workers, like nail salon, other industries that need more engagement, and other populations. So rural populations, Black workers, those kinds of things are very targeted by the program. And we've been able to really partner with DIR on how to improve the program. And especially in this time, talk about how we can include things like immigrant rights and other things, so that partnership is there and it has the grounds to become it is a really good program and will continue to improve. It's funded through a special fund known as the Labor and Workforce Development Fund. And this year we were able to get another $13 million to help with these next two rounds, 5.0 and 6.0. And the overall idea about codifying it into the labor code is to help add some consistency. So we have just finished a one-year funding gap, which has been, especially to the smaller organizations part of the program, has created struggles. We want to create more of a consistency, and that will include fighting for more budget, but it also includes making sure that it's on the radar every year, and that's where like passing the bill comes in. Currently, it's in the Assembly Appropriations Committee, which will probably like go on suspense, then we'll try to get it off suspense. So that's what we're looking at right now with the bill. And yeah, that's where it is. And I'll pass it on to the next one.
Thanks, Daniel. We're really excited to strongly partner with you all on supporting this critical worker education and outreach program, and excited about the budget win, and now hoping to seal the deal with the bill. The next priority I want to highlight on this first pillar is Assembly Bill 250, which is authored by Assemblymember Aguiar Curry. And this bill really addresses an issue that we, as a Stronger California Coalition, have prioritized for over 10 years of our existence, which is ensuring that survivors of sexual assault, be it at work, at school, or in other contexts, have the adequate protections they need to seek justice. We, as a Stronger California network, are acutely aware of the challenges that survivors face to achieving justice, and know that sexual assault is among one of the most traumatic experiences that a person can endure. And it's well documented that they often need significant time to process what happened to them and be able to take action to seek some type of recourse. The delay that we know often occurs for sexual assault survivors to come forward has been really well documented in research and scientific studies. And where an institution or person tries to conceal the assault or engage in a cover-up, these barriers are even greater for survivors to come forward. They not only face the trauma of the assault itself, but also the deliberate suppression of this experience that happened to them. And in many cases, the people trying to cover it up are those who should have protected them. And so AB 250 recognizes these unique challenges that survivors face that are exacerbated by efforts to conceal the wrongdoing, and it gives them an opportunity to achieve justice. So what the bill would do is ensure that a survivor, even if their statute of limitations has passed, to file a civil claim for the harm they suffered as a result of the sexual assault, it would give them an extra 2-year window to seek legal recourse, to try to get some type of support and some form of damages for the experience that they had, if a cover-up was involved or an attempt to cover up the sexual assault was involved. So this not only supports survivors, but it really supports the broader public interest. When survivors come forward, this can expose patterns of abuse, especially in the workplace. We know that sexual assault, like sexual harassment, can push women and other survivors out of the workforce. And so ensuring that they can come forward and seek justice not only supports them, but creates accountability within employment, within other institutions, and ensures that people can stay in employment and have economic security. So this is the high level overview of this bill, and it is also on suspense, and we will be sharing information about how you all can support it. Kel, I'll turn it back to you for the next pillar.
I think we're actually going to Megan.
Thanks, Cal. Hey, everyone. I'm Megan Abel, Senior Director of Advocacy at Tech Equity. And for those who aren't familiar, we're a research and policy advocacy organization that works where tech is intersecting with economic justice issues. Our bill, AB 1018, which is co-sponsored by SEIU California and authored by Assemblymember Bauer Cahan, is the Automated Decision Safety Act. So the first thing is just sort of, what are automated decision systems? If you're not sort of in the techie world, maybe you're not familiar. These systems use algorithms and machine learning to evaluate data and sometimes create profiles with inferred data that then apply a criteria to evaluate that data and produce a decision. The place where you might have heard of this most frequently in the news is these automated decision systems being used to screen resumes and make decisions about whether you'll get called back for an interview. Many people think that these tech-powered tools are going to be more objective than the decisions that are made by individuals, but I think it's important for us to remember that humans build these algorithms and AI, and their biases can be coded into these tools and used also in an irresponsible way that cause harm. Um, and what's worse is these biased decisions are happening at a speed and scale that's not feasible on an individual level. So the potential for impact and potential for harm when biased decisions are made and people are screened out of opportunity or services that they need are really great. So there's a really urgent need to create guardrails around the use of these automated decision tools that are really infiltrating every aspect of our daily lives. Automated decision systems are used to screen resumes and housing applications, determining who gets access to stable housing, economic opportunity, job advancement opportunities for working families. They're used to approve or deny access to public programs and safety nets like unemployment insurance and much more. So that's why we're sponsoring AB 1018. The bill will create important guardrails to ensure that these tools are safe and effective. It requires that the tools be tested before they're used on the public so that companies that make these technologies ensure that they don't create harm and comply with our existing non-discrimination and civil rights laws before they're sold and used on the public. And that these tests are done by verified independent third-party auditors. It provides notice to people that these tools are being used to make critical decisions about their daily lives. People often have no idea that this technology is being used to screen them, and provides information that folks need to know where these tools are showing up in their lives and how they'll be used to determine their access to housing, healthcare, job outcomes, and more. And it provides an explanation to folks who are subjected to these decisions using tools, ADS tools, by providing people an explanation of what the tool did, what personal information about them was used, and what role the tool used in making that decision, allowing people to correct inaccuracies that might unfairly screen them out. So we're really proud to be co-sponsoring this bill this year, and happy to take any questions in the chat.
Thanks, Megan. And my apologies to Megan for accidentally not having her on the first introduction slide. That was Megan Abel from Tech Equity. She is the Vice President of Advocacy. Next, we are going to move on to our second pillar. That pillar is expanding access to affordable, quality early childhood care and education. And we're going to be hearing from Jennifer Greppy, the Director of Parent Policy at Parent Voices California. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Let me unmute. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here today to talk to you a little bit more about childcare and what happened in the budget. Again, I'm Jennifer Greppy, and I'm the Director of Parent Policy with Parent Voices California. And this year in the budget, we had hundreds of parents come to the Capitol to share their stories, their experiences, and, what's happening in their lives with legislators to make sure that the budget reflects what their needs are. So, we had some good, we had some bad, and we had some ugly in the result of that. And so the good is we have added 12,000 new childcare spaces. We have 2 million kids in California who are eligible and waiting for care. And so 12,000 new spaces is sort of a small drop in the bucket of what we need, but it is progress. So we're going to celebrate progress. And it maintains the policy of paying childcare providers based on enrollment. So what that means is that providers get paid based on the child being there and just the way that they do when they go to elementary school. If the child's not there, the they don't get paid for it, right? And they have to keep that space available for the child. And so we want to make sure that childcare providers are paid regardless of whether the child is there or not, because their space is being taken. And so this budget makes sure that that policy is in place so that they are based, that payment is based on enrollment. The budget also includes a $70 million rate increase that's earmarked towards subsidized childcare and preschool for providers and establishes prospective pay. Now, what is prospective pay? Prospective pay is when providers get paid for the month that they're actually doing the work instead of the month prior. In addition to what sort of happened in the childcare budget, we also have our childcare union in California. And the childcare union every 3 years is coming together to sort of, create a new contract. And this year took a little longer than, in past years, but they finally got to an agreement. And that agreement has not been ratified yet. So these are all proposed changes. I just want to make that clear. They have not voted, and until that happens, these will not be final. But in that proposed agreement, they are increasing a $37 million ongoing per year for COLAs, a $90 million one-time stabilization payment, 80 million ongoing for retirement, 100 million ongoing for healthcare, 15 million ongoing for training. And it also gives this option to renegotiate or to have sort of this, reopener if the legislator or the legislature puts more money in the budget, which is really important because we want to make sure that that the legislature, that the Women's Caucus and others has the opportunity to put additional funding in, because we know that we are nowhere close to actually paying based on the true cost of care, and we need to get there. So I want to just share one last small story, which, sort of highlights the importance of childcare for families. And, each year we work tirelessly to make sure that their stories and their experiences are really top of mind when the budget is being figured out. And why is that? It's because budgets are about priorities, and our priorities are making sure that our children and our families have access to the care that they need to be able to work and go to school and do all the things that they need, but also so our kids are ready for school and that they have, the ability to be, uh, you know, in a program that really meets their family's needs. And so we have a really incredible mom who was able to share her story in the Capitol. And she had been waiting for 4 years for her spot. And just a couple of weeks ago, she finally got the call that she was going to be off the waiting list. And for families that are finally pulled off the waiting list after waiting for 4 years, this is life-changing. And we want to make sure that more families every year get that magical call because they're waiting and waiting and waiting. And when the call happens, it is so meaningful to their family. And it allows her to now go to barber school, which she's been waiting to do for, 4 long years. And she'll be able to, have her dream of being a barber and doing what she's always wanted to do for her family. And so, um, I want to thank you all for allowing me to share this with you today. I want to also just call out quickly the Child Care Law Center, who's been a really important partner with Parent Voices, along with all of the other, sort of ECE advocates that work very hard to make sure that families and providers have access to the care that they need. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Stronger California was proud to support the organizing efforts of these childcare providers, the majority of whom are women, and helping them ensure that they have more power to obtain livable pay and benefits. With that, I will hand it over to our next presenter for our Supporting Family-Friendly Workplaces pillar, We'll be hearing from Katie Duberg, the Political Organizing Director at California Work and Family Coalition. Take it away, Katie.
Thanks, Kel, and thanks everyone for joining us. It's great to be here and talking about this really important issue. So I'm here to talk about SB 590, which is authored by Senator Durazo, paid family leave for chosen family. So what SB 590 would do is it would update how we define family in California's paid family leave program so that qualifying workers can get paid family leave to care for a member of their chosen or extended family. So right now, California workers who qualify can get paid through paid family leave to care for a seriously ill family member, but that family member has to be a parent, child, spouse, registered domestic partner, grandparent, grandchild, or sibling. So this means when we do trainings on paid family leave and people ask me questions like, can I get paid family leave if I need to care for my aunt? Or what if I'm not married to my partner? Or what if I'm caring for my neighbor who has dementia? And I have to say, no, you can't get paid family leave to care for those folks right now. And so paid family leave is entirely funded by worker contributions to the Disability Insurance Fund. We all contribute so that when we have a need for leave, we can get part of our regular pay from paid family leave. So SB 590 is really important to ensure equitable access to the program and that how California families are already caring for each other is recognized in the program. And we know that this change is especially important for older adults, for LGBTQ communities, and for immigrant communities, all of whom are more likely to rely on chosen and extended family relationships that aren't currently recognized in our paid family leave program. And this understanding of family is already present in other leave laws because of the passage of AB 1041, which was also a priority of the Stronger California Advocates Network. And now California workers can receive unpaid job protected leave or can take unpaid job protected leave to care for a member of their chosen or extended family and can also use their paid sick leave to care for their chosen or extended family, and we want to make sure that folks can receive paid family leave as well. The bill was referred to Assembly Appropriations, and we're a proud co-sponsor along with equal rights advocates, ARP California, Equality California, California Employment Lawyers Association, Legal Aid at Work, and United LA. Thanks.
Thanks, Katie. We are proud, both at Equal Rights Advocates and in Stronger California, to have supported PFL for Chosen Family and various paid family or various chosen family efforts over the years. And we are hoping that this is our year. So with that, we will move on to our next pillar. This pillar is building economic security by addressing poverty and building assets. This is a hearty pillar, so we'll be hearing from a few folks. First is Andrew Shane, the Managing Director of Public Policy for Grace and Child Poverty. Next is Krista Klong, the Executive Director of the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence. Lan Lei, a policy advocate with Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Southern California, and me. So with that, I'll hand it to you, Andrew.
Thank you so much. And just thanks to everyone for being here and congratulations. And as Jennifer already grounded us, you know, our victories are always community powered, and that's the case for Reimagine CalWorks. And just deep gratitude to Stronger California, Equal Rights Advocates, the Roundtable, the larger coalition. You know, this really was a major effort, and I'll just be honest that I supported other efforts like getting rid of the maximum family grant, which I know again Stronger California had a huge part in, but I had never played such a close role to an issue that really clearly unearthed deep-seated biases and prejudices against women of color, against people experiencing poverty, by even, you know, so-called allies, people who clearly think of themselves in a certain way. And yet when you really got down to trying to remove expressly racist and sexist and classist policies, there were, you know, just all these reasons why we couldn't do it, you know, and not just the cost, right? All of these policy and political reasons were unearthed, and nothing really lays bare the lie of all of that than hearing from community. For those of you who don't know the CalWorks program, it is our version of the nation's TANF program, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, our core cash assistance and basic needs safety net that used to be AFDC, aka welfare, right? So need not say more than to understand, you know, some of that context I was giving. And I just so much gratitude to Parent Voices, to student parents, our Reimagining CalWorks, this coalition, and others. Who, parents just came and testified time and time again. I'll put a couple links in the chat, including Brianna from Parent Voices, Joy from Spark, and so many other folks that we're seeing here. CalWorks, California thankfully has the largest program, but it's still deeply embedded with policies that go straight back to Pete Wilson and Newt Gingrich that sanction families, taking away their financial resources, pushing them into deeper poverty, which we know is toxic and a form of child abuse, as well as just deeply coercive, stigmatizing, judgmental, instead of being the supportive, empowering program that we know it can be. So I know there's a lot going on here, but this is at least better than a bullet point of all these complicated policies. And so what we're looking at is what parents and families experience when, even after they're approved for CalWorks. So there's even steps we're not seeing to even get this far, but even after you're approved, you have to interview. And in the old days, there were two different appointments called orientation. You need to get oriented and then learn about CalWorks. Then you have to be appraised. And then this very, in our current process, very top-down, bureaucratic. We are going to judge you. We're going to sort of tell you what your options are to participate in order to get your cash assistance. We're not able to undo all of the federal rules. But I hope that you're seeing here some of the language around participants. That's the language of the program, aka moms, overwhelmingly Black and Latina moms and parents. They are now able to create their own plan. And yes, there are still going to be some limits, but a much more self-determined, parent-centered process with less paperwork, fewer appointments, more pieces that are optional. So if families do have barriers and need help, there's ways to reach out to the county social workers. And I really want to thank the counties for working with us and SCIU California as part of the coalition, because they too agreed that, you know, the time that counties and workers are spending, it's enforcing penalties, it's coercing parents, it's chasing paperwork, instead of spending time in dialogue and figuring out what people's plans and dreams are and the best way the county can support them. So you're seeing things crossed out. That means we got rid of these artificial barriers, like you've got to go sit in a room and search for jobs for a month, you know, even though you've obviously already done that if you're applying for cash assistance. And then at the bottom, I just want to draw your attention that three big wins in this package is that we were able to defer the sanction, so the financial penalty, for 90 days. So no one is going to get sanctioned for the first 90 days. After that time, that sanction policy is still on the books. We're going to come back for that. So don't get me wrong. Our work is not done, but that was a major first step. And then there's improved access to the existing child care benefit within CalWorks. So that connects to some of the issues that Jennifer was talking to, and the transportation that most parents are entitled to. So those are not new benefits. It's not expansion of those benefits, but we know far too many parents are not getting the child care they need through CalWorks. They're not getting the transportation they need to get to work and get to school. And so those are important improvements as well. So I'll put a couple pieces in the chat. And I'll just point out that, as you can imagine, this is a boatload of implementation work. And so if you are connected to this program or working with families and service providers in the community, please get in touch with me or Jennifer, because we are a part of the group working to make these changes real. Thanks again.
Thanks so much for sharing all of that, Andrew, and just the amazing work and victory. I want to shift gears a little bit to talk about some budget advocacy to shore up response to Californian survivors of crime. We have worked with as part of the Stronger California Network, my organization, the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence, and others have worked for the past 2 years to shore up funding for critical services. We're talking about funding that goes to domestic violence service providers for their emergency crisis hotlines, their emergency shelters, counseling, legal services. This is funding that goes to rape crisis centers throughout the state to provide counseling, hospital support as survivors go through forensic exams, so many other services. This touches child abuse, elder abuse, human trafficking. This funds our district attorney's offices and nonprofits. Throughout the state, over 400 organizations rely on these funds in one way or another to help support their critical work with survivors of crime in California. But because of really devastating declines over several years at the federal level, the state was facing pretty big cuts and looking at dramatic reductions in how much they were able to provide in funding to these organizations, which would mean direct impacts on how many shelter beds are available. Programs were talking about, what days they wouldn't accept walk-ins, what days they wouldn't be able to go out to the hospital to respond to a sexual assault, what language access and culturally specific programming would need to be pared down, and so much more. We also navigated through this entire state budget year, not only battling a hard state budget cycle, but tremendous uncertainty from the federal level, because we did not know until just a few weeks ago how much money was actually going to come our way from the federal government. Some really great news to share is that the final budget provided $100 million in one-time funding. And now that we do know how much is coming from the federal level, we are confirmed that programs will not experience any cuts for this fiscal year. So it's been a tremendous sigh of relief for victim service providers to know that they can continue to show up for their communities and survivors. We did see a lot of bipartisan support, and that was really heartening and really amazing, and just incredible champions in Senator Reyes and Assemblymember Schiavo to really move this forward. Unfortunately, on the downside is that the state backfill was just a one-time funding, which leaves us already planning for 2026 budget cycle on how we can continue to shore up this funding and ensure that the safety net for crime survivors continues to be intact. The other challenge we are navigating through is that at the federal level, we have seen new grant conditions attached to this funding this year that are a direct attack on services for our immigrant communities. And so that is causing a whole bunch of challenges and is uncharted water for us to navigate through in this space. So while we are thrilled with this inclusion in this year's budget, we do know that there is a tremendous amount of need for continued advocacy in this area, and incredibly grateful for the Stronger California community who we know have rallied around this for 2 years, and we will be back next year for more.
I ordered these slides and I didn't even think about the fact that I perfectly positioned myself, putting myself after Krista and Andrew, because we're about to talk about our next bill, which is very much related to both CalWORKs and domestic violence. So I invite everyone to think about a survivor of domestic violence who is trying to escape an abusive home. With financial assistance from CalWORKs, she could afford to get herself and her children to safety, but the application requires the signature of both parents, and the abuser refuses to sign for the sake of keeping her trapped. AB 969 is about helping families in situations exactly like this one. Due to the economic impact of abuse, social safety net programs like CalWORKs can really mean the difference between safety and continued harm for survivors and their families. And AB 969 will make it easier for domestic violence survivors to access and maintain critical CalWORKs benefits by making much overdue updates to how our state approaches domestic violence program waivers. So for nearly 30 years, California has allowed counties to waive any CalWORKs program requirement that would make it more difficult for a survivor and their children to escape abuse, or that would be detrimental or unfairly penalize them. However, the way we're structuring these waivers just isn't working for survivors right now, and that's for a couple of reasons. One is that these accommodations are currently limited to folks who are participating in welfare to work, and that leaves a lot of people out. For example, if you are a parent receiving supplemental security income, you are not part of welfare to work and therefore would not qualify for a waiver. There's also very little consistency between counties and how these waivers are approached. So that means a survivor in one county can have a completely different outcome than a survivor in another county. There's also the fact that many survivors in this position are simply unaware that such support is available, despite the fact that we do have statutory requirements that say that they should be. And so this bill will do a couple things. First, it will ensure that all domestic violence survivors who are applying for or receiving CalWORKs are able to request a waiver when they need one. The bill is also going to establish a more consistent, efficient, and transparent process for how these waivers are assessed and issued, and how CalWORKs families are informed about the options available to them. The last thing that the bill is going to do is codify support for survivors of other forms of gender-based violence. So survivors of sexual violence, sexual harassment, and stalking, to make sure that we are providing as much support as possible to everyone within the CalWORKs program who is experiencing gender-based violence and who needs more support in the wake of that experience. We are co-sponsored by the Women's Foundation of California Police Policy Institute. In this capacity, I'm speaking as a fellow of that program. Also co-sponsored by the Western Center on Law and Poverty, the Coalition of California Welfare Rights Organizations, and the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence. Our Senate appropriations hearing was yesterday, and we are on suspense. So please keep your fingers crossed for us as we try to get off the suspense file. And with that, I will pass to Lon.
Thanks, Cal. Hi, folks. Thanks for being here. My name is Lan Lei, pronoun she, they, and I'm with Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Southern California. We are a co-sponsor, along with Chirla, of AB 49 by Assemblymember Almer Tsuchi. So this bill would protect immigrant students and their families from immigration enforcement in schools. Specifically, it does that by prohibiting ICE officers from entering a school site without providing four things: valid identification, a written statement of purpose, a valid judicial warrant, and approval from the school superintendent. As many of you probably know, schools throughout California have been reporting significant drops in attendance, in part because many students and their families are afraid of going to school because they may be stopped or questioned by ICE. And this is significant because in California, there are more than 133,000 undocumented children in public schools, and there are more than 750,000 K-12 students who have an undocumented parent. And these absences have serious consequences, not only in terms of funding for the schools, but also for the individual students. Because for many of the immigrant students who are from low-income backgrounds, missing school means they're missing meals. It means they're losing access to critical resources like counselors, nurses, and sometimes the only stable environment that they may have. So this issue only compounds upon the existing educational and socioeconomic inequities. So AB 49 has passed Senate appropriations yesterday, and it's going directly to the Senate floor. I hope we can count on your support, and then I'll pass it back to Cal. Thanks.
Thanks, Lon. We are rounding the home stretch here and moving on to our final pillar. This pillar is protecting health and reproductive rights. We have two speakers. The first is Craig Pulsifer, the Legislative Director for Equality California, and the next is Symphony Barbie, a legislative advocate with Planned Parenthood Affiliates of California. So Craig, you can kick us off. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Good to be with everyone today. So just wanted to provide some background on the next two bills. As many of you know, the Trump administration has waged an all-out assault on trans people across the country, and in particular, they're doing everything they can to prevent trans young people from accessing medically necessary healthcare. The administration has proposed to restrict federal funding for hospitals and clinics that provide this care, and they're also weaponizing the U.S. Department of Justice and threatening to pursue criminal penalties against healthcare providers who offer this care. So these threats are obviously creating very real concerns for patients and providers, and also having a real impact on access to care. Some clinics, including Children's Hospital Los Angeles, have already stopped providing some services for trans youth. So needless to say, it's important for California to do everything it can to protect access to care and ensure providers can offer this care without fear of punishment or criminalization. So thankfully, California over the past several years has enacted a number of legal protections for patients and healthcare providers. But this year, we're working to expand those protections and even further, and especially working to protect sensitive medical data and ensure that it can't be accessed by hostile actors in other states. So the first bill, SB 497 by Senator Wiener. This is sponsored by Equality California, Planned Parenthood, and Trans Family Support Services. This bill has a couple pieces. The first is related to the Cures database. This is a database maintained by the California DOJ that contains prescription data on controlled substances. Cures plays an important role in protecting public health, but current law allows for Cures data to be shared with out-of-state law enforcement agencies, which obviously creates significant risks for patients and providers. Some of the controlled substances maintained in Cures, like testosterone, are commonly prescribed as part of gender-affirming care. And some states are also using these databases to monitor prescriptions for mifepristone, which also poses a threat to reproductive health care. So SB 497 has a couple pieces in it. The first, the bill would require warrants for out-of-state law enforcement to access the state's Cures database. The bill would also establish criminal penalties for accessing or sharing information from the database without a warrant. And then the second piece of the bill would build on California's existing legal protections to prohibit healthcare providers from complying with out-of-state subpoenas requiring the disclosure of medical data and information related to gender-affirming care. And then the second bill, AB 82 by Assemblymember Ward, this bill is sponsored by Equality California, Planned Parenthood, and Trans Family Support Services. This bill is very much complementary to SB 497 and also has some provisions related to the Cures database. So AB 82 will strengthen data privacy protections by prohibiting the reporting of testosterone and mifepristone to the Cures database so that this information could not be weaponized by hostile actors in other states. And then the second piece of this bill is designed to protect the safety of patients and healthcare providers. This bill would allow gender-affirming care patients and providers to enroll in the Safe at Home program. This is a program maintained by the Secretary of State that allows individuals facing safety threats to receive a substitute mailing address so that they can keep their personal information confidential and protect themselves from harassment and violence. So these are two critical bills to help ensure that trans people in California can continue to access the healthcare they need, and also to protect healthcare providers who are facing very real and growing threats from the Trump administration. And, I would just add, on a more personal level, we are in frequent communication with parents and providers across the state who are just terrified about what's happening right now and the impact of these threats on their families. And I know they are all watching these bills very closely and really looking to California to step up in this moment and protect them and their families. In terms of process, both of these bills are currently in the Appropriations Committee on suspense, and so we are hopeful they will advance next week, and then we'll need everyone's support to apply pressure on the governor's office and help ensure that they are signed into law. And then back to you, Cal.
I think we're actually
Back to Symphony.
yeah.
Thank you, Craig. Hello, everyone. My name is Symphony Barbie. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the legislative advocate for Planned Parenthood Affiliates of California. And today I'll be presenting on AB 260, a sponsored bill of PPAC that protects access to medication abortion here in California. And so, as mentioned before, the federal government under the Trump administration has been a full-out attack and assault on our freedoms here in the United States. And one of those things is access to abortion. Obviously, the Trump administration and Republicans have been out for access to abortion, first with the overturning of Roe v. Wade after Trump got 2 court appointees in his first term, and we are seeing the impacts of that. And so AB 260 is an attempt to protect Californians in case of any further action to strip the safety FDA approval of mifepristone. And so this bill does a handful of things. First, it strengthens our state law to protect medication abortion. And so it's just going to establish that the medication is safe and legal to use here in the state of California, regardless of what happens at the federal level. The second thing it will do is protect providers, pharmacies, clinics, hospitals from disciplinary action. It will protect them from having their licenses revoked in the state of California because of any federal attempts to roll back the safety approval of mifepristone and for their prescribing of it to patients. It's also going to do another thing. It's going to remove provider names from prescription labels. This is very important for provider safety. So if you have your prescription medication bottle, your doctor's name won't be on there, and it will just make it so that these providers are safe from any attacks that could happen for abortion providers. It also expands access to medication abortion via telehealth. This is very important. This makes it more accessible for people to get access to MAB, to medication abortion, and, especially for folks in California who live in more rural parts who may not have a provider close to them, as a lot of healthcare facilities have unfortunately been closing. We need to make sure that people are able to get access to this critical health care in any mode that they can. So that's what the bill does. It really just shows California's commitment to protecting reproductive freedom access here in California. And it builds upon the work that was done when Californians chose the fundamental right to choose to have an abortion and contraceptives via Prop 1. And what we are seeing right now is the Trump administration assaulting this freedom head on with the defunding of Planned Parenthood via HR 1 and really just making it extremely difficult and unsafe to access critical health care. And so for these reasons, we're running AB 260. I'll just run through quickly through some of the sponsors we have on this bill. We have Essential Access Health, Reproductive Freedom for All, California Latinas for Reproductive Justice, Black Women for Wellness, Teach, Access Reproductive Justice, URGE, Hey Jane. And we also have support from the Attorney General, from the Lieutenant Governor, and the Treasurer. So we're very hopeful that once it makes it off of approps, we're going to speak it into existence that it passes. Once it makes it off of approach, that the governor is signing this. And so where we could use support from you all is getting letters of support for signature to the governor's desk at the appropriate time. And I will be more than happy to follow up with the template letter that you all can use to support this critical piece of legislation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Symphony, and thank you so much to all of our presenters today. We really appreciate your time and expertise in this space. So hopefully you heard at least one bill, hopefully many more than one bill today that you're excited about, that you're interested in supporting. And we really are in the home stretch of the legislative season. And so your support is more important now than ever. We at Hunger California offer a few different ways you can get involved without having to go to individual bill sponsors. One is to join our action team. That way you'll receive emails with opportunities to support all of our priority bills. That link is included here. You can also just sign up for general updates from Stronger California. Again, that link is included here. That's also where the QR code will direct you to. And it's pretty easy to navigate from there to our action center if you want to get those updates rather than typing in the link. And then finally, if you are with an organization that works on economic security issues, particularly for women, families, people of color, et cetera, the intersection of all those things, and you'd be interested in joining the Stronger California Advocates Network, we would love to have you. In that case, you can email me and Jessica. Our emails are here, and we'd love to talk more. And with that, I will pass it back to Jessica to close us out.
Thank you, Kel. I hope that everyone who was able to join us today feels empowered. It can feel paralyzing at times in the face of these unprecedented attacks that we are seeing and experiencing on our fundamental rights and in our communities. I also want to thank the Blue Shield Foundation of California, James Irvine Foundation, Women's Foundation of California, who are among various other generous foundations and individuals who help to fund the groups that are doing this work. And we know that without support, this work cannot get done. For more than a decade, the Stronger California Advocates Network has worked together to advance policies that support women, families, workers, LGBTQ communities, and many more. And we are proud to stand together to fight back against these harmful attacks on our rights, on our communities, and not only to protect and defend our communities, but also to continue to move proactive policy reform that continues moving the needle forward as we have always done. And so I hope that you all came away with feeling emboldened and empowered to support some of these important policies that are necessary in California for our communities, for our families, and we will continue to fight as the Stronger California Advocates Network for these critical policies. So thank you so much to everyone for joining. We will follow up with ways that you can engage, and we look forward to continuing the fight with you all. Thank you.